I do with No, that's from the last one. Could everybody please stand and recite with me the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. My name is Nina Rosamondo. I'm president of the League of Women Voters, South County. On behalf of the League, I would like to welcome you to the Meet the Candidates Night for the Rhode Island Senate District 36, representing Narragansett and North Kingstown, and House Districts 34 and 35, representing Narragansett, South Kingstown, and sections of Wakefield. The views expressed tonight are those of the candidates, not of the League of Women Voters. And the sponsorship of this debate is not an endorsement by the League of any candidate. I'd like to thank the members of the audience here at the Narragansett Town Hall, to the candidates for Senate District 36, Mr. James Sheehan and Mr. John Silvaggio, over there. For House District 34, Ms. Ava Gzerzinski and Ms. Teresa Tanzi. And for House District 35, Ms. Kathleen Fogarty and Mr. John Brandon Monk. Lastly, thanks to our viewers on Cox Channels 17 and 18 and Verizon Channels 28 and 29. One of the most important duties we have as citizens is to learn about issues and candidates so we can make informed choices when we vote. And I hope you will all vote November 6th. If you find a forum like this is an essential part of your election decisions, please consider joining the League and help provide Narragansett and South Kingstown and other communities with nonpartisan voter education and advocacy for open and accountable government. The League is open to both men and women. There are membership materials on the table by the door, along with other voter information. Please take the time and check them out at the end of this forum. Democracy works only when citizens participate in the process. Forums like this could easily be a lost resource to your community if citizens are only spectators in the process. In fact, the reality is, unless some more residents from South Kingstown and Narragansett and parts of the other communities represented tonight join our League, we will not be able to put on these forums in 2020. So, talk with a League member tonight. Consider attending a monthly meeting. Take the time to learn more. We're here tonight to ask questions of the candidates and to listen respectfully to each of them as they discuss issues important to the future of your communities and Rhode Island. We appreciate your voter interest and enthusiasm, but please hold your applause and refrain from reacting to the candidates' answers. This is a nonpartisan forum. I would now like to welcome and thank our moderator tonight, Holly Courage. Ms. Courage is a past president of the State League of Rhode Island and past president of the Providence League. She is currently treasurer of the League of Women Voters Rhode Island Education Fund and chair of the League of Women Voters U.S. Clearinghouse Committee, which is a group that maintains a website of studies done by the League around the country. So now I'm turning this forum over to our moderator, Holly Courage.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. The format for tonight The candidates have drawn the seating order when they arrived and are grouped by the position they are running for: Senate District 36, House Districts 34 and 35. There will be no opening statement, and the closing statements of 1 minute will be done in seating order. Each question will be directed to the two nominees for the same office. The groups will each be asked one question before we move on to the next round of questions. This is a little hard to explain verbally, but once we get going, I'm sure you'll figure out what we're doing. So, okay. In addition, let's see. All candidates will be asked the same number of questions and will be given 1 minute to respond. In addition, each will be given 2 colored index cards or wild cards, and after each candidate in a group has been asked one question, the candidates may use a wild card to respond. And candidates to whom the question was not asked will be given 1 minute to respond if they use a wild card. However, once a candidate has used up both their wild cards, he or she may only respond to questions directed to him or her. They are free in their closing statement to address issues or answer questions that they were unable to answer during the forum. Okay, so we'll begin the first round of questions. The first question will go to Eva G. Wierzinski and Teresa Tanzi. Okay, let's see. Ms. G. Wierzinski. There has been no vote in the Senate or the House on the proposed reproductive rights legislation over the past 2 years. The number of legislative supporters has increased each year, and a recent poll reported in the Providence Journal stated that 71% of the public supports passage of a reproductive rights bill, and only 19% oppose it. What is your position on this legislation?
Thank you for that question. Well, I'm actually a pro-life candidate. I have my values that I was raised with. I'm very involved in the church, so that's where I stand on that. I know we need women's access to health care, such as breast screenings, and I support that. But as far as reproductive rights and the bill that's being proposed, I don't support that at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tanzi.
Thank you. I am in full support of the Reproductive Health Care Act. There currently, and I think a lot of people may not understand this, there's a law on the books today that would make it immediately, if Roe were to be overturned, it would immediately make it illegal for any woman in the state to obtain an abortion. Immediately, it would happen. The law is marked unconstitutional as it exists, and we have failed to repeal it. I am in full support of repealing that currently unconstitutional law in case the Supreme Court ever decides to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I think that that's more and more likely, as we just saw the most recent appointee to our Supreme Court. A woman has no autonomy and no control over her life if she can't control the most simple part of her health, and that is when and whether to have a child. And I think that that's a fundamental choice that should be left exclusively to a woman and her doctor.
Thank you. Mr. Sheehan?
I'd like to use one of my wild cards if I could on that.
Yes.
Thank you. I can certainly hear both sides, both candidates and their opinions. Personally, abortion is something that does concern me. But I've had to do a lot of soul searching on this issue. I think if we look at what's currently on the law books right now, there's an out-and-out ban on abortion. That doesn't mean that if Roe were ever overturned, which is a possibility given recent retirements, that we could see something like that. That doesn't mean that abortions would be banned. It just means they would become very unsafe, perhaps inaccessible, and that's not good public policy. So my position on this has been that we should have access, safe access to affordable abortions in the state if that unintended pregnancy does occur. So that is my position on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Question 2 will go to Kathleen Fogarty. Oh, okay, sorry, Mr. Monk.
I think the issue of the newest Supreme Court justice and all of the fervor that has surrounded that, I think it's a little blown out of proportion. There's no indication that the conservatives on the court would overturn Roe v. Wade. In fact, every one of them has stated that Roe v. Wade is law. It's settled law. So I understand the concern, and I do understand the situation, if something were to happen, the situation that woman would be put in. But there's really no reason to believe that conservative justices are going to turn around on that issue of Roe v. Wade. And if you look at the conservative justices, just think back to...
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Fogarty.
I would like to say that we don't really know what's going to happen on the Supreme Court. With the recent appointment, there hasn't really been enough time, and with this administration, it's been such shocking events keep happening week after week that we really don't know what's going to happen in the Supreme Court. And if another seat comes open, then they might feel another conservative justice that they really can move forward with that. That's why I stand with, and I am a Catholic woman, and I stand with other Catholics that have said that, you know, what we saw in the recent poll in the paper, that over 70% of people of the Catholic faith believe in the choice. And so I stand behind that, and I also realize as a state representative and in this town that I represent other people who are not just Catholics. And I respect their opinions, but I wholeheartedly support a woman's choice and her rights to rule over her own body and have a discussion with her husband and a physician. It's a privacy issue, and it should stay a privacy issue. Thank you.
Thank you. No? Okay, now we can move on to question 2.
Okay.
The question will go to Kathleen Fogarty and John Brandon Monk. A 43-member gun safety working group formed by the governor in the aftermath of the Parkland, Florida school killings recently released its final report. Among the many recommendations are: 1, a ban on all guns, including concealed carry in schools; 2, a ban on high-capacity magazines; and 3, raising the age to buy long guns from 18 to 21. Please state your position for each of these 3 recommendations.
Well, I think you could even go back on the record. Thank you for the question. As far as those 3 particular items on gun bills, if you look at the legislation, my name is pretty much one of the co-sponsors on all of those bills. I've always supported the School Safety Act. I was glad that the governor took her executive step to put it in place. I'd like to go back and have us all vote on it in both the House and the Senate to just put a stamp on that. I've always supported Representative Regenberg and the limit of magazine rounds, and also to the right of me, Representative Tanzi has long supported increasing the age to 21 on long guns, and I completely support her stance on that, and I've signed on to her bill for several years now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Monk.
As far as the Safe Schools Act, I agree that we don't need any additional guns in schools. I think we can count on our law enforcement, and I don't think, first of all, teachers want to be carrying guns, and secondly, I'm not sure that that would be a good idea to begin with. As far as the magazines go, I think probably less bullets is better than more bullets. And as far as long guns go, I never really thought about it, but if we're going to move it from 18 to 21, it may prohibit, kids, not unguided, but it might not allow some kids to go hunting and that type of thing. But as far as guns in schools and magazines, I agree with the position on both of those.
Thank you. Mr. Silvaggio.
Yes, hi. Hello? Oh, yes, hi. First, Nina, I want to thank her for doing this event. Holly, I want to thank you for asking the questions. I'm going to use this card now because I'm an instructor for firearms. I'm actually an instructor for law enforcement and civilian. Well, former law enforcement, the certification may have lapsed, but I think the knowledge is still inside me. I'm also an armorer from Springfield, but I am not endorsed by the NRA, even though I'm an NRA member. The issues that we're talking about now, magazines and semi-automatic bans. The reason why I could be against semi-automatic bans is because as an armorer, the nomenclature of those firearms are very similar to a pistol that a police officer uses. It's just the barrel length is more or less the differential with the shell. I cannot support semi-automatic bans. Now, magazines, high-capacity magazines, I don't support those bans either.
Thank you. Sorry. Sorry.
Time?
Time.
Oh, can I make a comment in regard to the Safe Schools Act as well?
What is that?
He's asking to add another.
If you want to use your wild card, you can add another minute.
Okay, I'll save it then.
Oh, he's already used that. He was using a wild card right then. So,
that was,
okay.
You've already used your one, you have one other wild card. You want to hold?
I want to save that wild card.
Okay. So,
Teresa.
Ms. Tansey.
Thank you very much. I have been a proud sponsor of the bill to raise the purchase age for long guns to 21 because handguns are currently at 21. The way that the bill is written, it's actually written very thoughtfully so that those who are hunting are not prevented from possessing them, just not purchasing them. So when they're under the guidance of an adult and participating in a lawful use, such as hunting, they are obviously allowed to be in possession of them. And I have to say, I was also a sponsor of the red flag bill, and we saw that go into use just this year. And it is an incredibly important piece of law enforcement tool that, even the police chiefs have come up to us and expressed their gratitude for allowing them the opportunity to remove guns from the people who are dangerously mentally ill. So
thank you. Okay, no one else? Okay. The next question will go to Senator Sheehan and James Sheehan and John Silvaggio. In January 2019, the Rhode Island House and Senate will propose a new set of rules for each chamber. Many bills are, quote, held for further study, unquote, in committee year after year. This includes bills supported by the majority of the public, such as line item veto, school gun bans, and pay equity. If elected, what rules would you specifically propose so that more bills are voted on in committee and then go to the full House or Senate for a vote? Senator Sheehan.
Okay. I think there are some very constructive things we can do with the rules, but first I'll say that those items that you suggested, I do support those pieces of legislation. Actually sponsored line item veto as well, and as well set on a commission for that. I think all bills should have an up or down vote, and if a bill is held for further study, and if it comes back, there should be a rule to say that the members have to approve a bill coming back too. It's not just kind of mysteriously is on the agenda again. I also would like to see that chairs of the various committees be based on, this may sound counterintuitive, but based on seniority. Reason being is that helps distribute the power that is up in the General Assembly, and it does it in such a way that can't be politicized in any way. I think that would be an effective way to redistribute power and allow the chairs to have a little more independence to hear bills like that without worrying about losing their chairmanship, of which I actually lost my chairmanship over the ethics reform initiative that I pushed. So those are a couple things off the top of my head. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Silvaggio.
Yes, this has been a hot topic. It's been discussed in the forum before us. I support the line item veto. I support that. I also support diluting the powers of the chairs, of the separation of the House and Senate. The reason being is this holding of the bills is only it's only hindering us from progression. We're not able to pass what we really need, and they're using it to hold this some sort of collateral to wheel and deal. It's not good. I think that's literally the doorway to the corporates and how they're getting in here to sponsor their candidates. Let's get that power away from them.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tansey.
Thank you. It's something I've been giving a lot of thought to and have been working with my colleague, Rep. Fogarty, so maybe I can save you using one of your cards, because we agree that there needs to be rule changes that are substantial. We need greater transparency. We are going to be calling for 48 hours on a sub-A being printed and publicly available in advance of any votes being taken, and we do need a mechanism created to bring bills to a vote earlier. We've contemplated a 2-year term where all bills are on a 2-year cycle that will help streamline and make each session more efficient. That way we're not hearing the same bill year after year. We would like to have committees vote on bills and implement a discharge petition for committee votes, as well as bringing back the 2007 version of a discharge petition where a simple 38 signatures would guarantee that a bill is brought to the floor for a vote.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Round 2. The next question will go to Mr. Monk and Ms. Fogarty. The legislative grant program awards funds to government agencies and nonprofits. This year, the total was over $2 million, with the top 3 lawmakers in the leadership awarding almost $500,000 worth of grants to their districts. Do you support the Rhode Island legislative grant process in any form? Please explain your position. Mr. Monk.
I don't have an issue with the grant process. I do have the idea of grants is good, and being able to help nonprofits in the community is also a very good thing. But I don't think that it should be at the discretion of the chairmans. I think that it should be equally dispersed so that each representative has some control in their local region rather than all that $500,000 being spent at the top.
Thank you. Ms. Fogarty.
The grant program was put in place to help nonprofits. I do see that there has been huge abuse with that. As a matter of fact, I'm not very happy with the top 3 getting the amount of money that they did. The only money that I ever asked for the grant was for the Johnny Cake Center around Thanksgiving. Representative Tansey, myself, and Representative Hagan McEntee asked for that money for the Thanksgiving baskets. I actually did ask for more money for South Kingstown Education Foundation, and I was denied because the speaker didn't feel that he could give that to an educational entity, but yet he did that to one of his recently in his own district. So I have a problem, and just like the rules changes that Representative Tansey just spoke about, I think that we have rules changes that could be used as far as the grant process, and I'd like that to happen, and I'd like to see it limited to the amount of money, and I really don't think that it should even be a $2 million budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wierzinski.
I actually do not support the grant program. Those are taxpayer dollars that go into that, so that is everyone's money going into that, and the way it's distributed, you basically, I think it's more of bribing, getting votes, and the way they're distributed is not fair. We see Cranston's district getting the bulk of it. I think it's great for the community. However, it's not really serving the purpose of what it was intended for, because it does serve as more of a bribe, I think, for votes. So I do not support the program.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. The next question will go to Mr. Silvaggio and Senator Sheehan. 44 states and the District of Columbia allow the line item veto. Legislation supporting the line item veto died in the 2018 legislature. And in June, a special legislative commission examining the pros and cons of the governor having the power to strike items from the budget recommended against the line item veto. What is your position on this issue, Mr. Silvaggio?
Thank you, Holly. And also, I'd like to take this time to thank the constituents of the South County for writing in these questions for us to answer. These are important issues that we're all facing, so I hope to tackle them together. As far as the line item veto, I think I was preemptive in just talking about that before. I do support that, although as my constituents have stated in the debate before me, we do have to worry still about the abuse of power and what's going to be going on with the line item veto, what items actually can be vetoed within that. So yes, I do support that, and thank you.
Okay. Senator Sheehan.
Thank you. I vehemently support this. I've had legislation in on line item veto. Because of my activism, I was placed on the commission, which was a joint commission between the House and the Senate. There are also resident citizens involved with that process too. My decision in that, I came out and saying that we should support the line item. Unfortunately, we were outvoted. We being the Senate tended to want to do the line item veto. The members and present company probably, I assume, excluded, didn't want to run the House side, and their members are appointed. That's kind of the politics of it. Unfortunately, the Speaker has more to lose in a budgetary process than others. But I think it's a good tool. It's not a panacea like many other reforms. I'm involved with the reform movement for many years in various different ways. But it does allow a surgical carving out of a line item in a budget that maybe is not well thought through or maybe is wasteful in some way. But let's not forget that the General Assembly still would have the final say as to whether or not we could override. And the override threshold in Rhode Island is much lower than nationally. It's only 60%. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Oh,
So yeah, one of my platforms for this election is transparency. And I feel that we really need to focus on the budget. I feel we need a line item veto. These are not props. These are actually the budget. I've gone through the budget. I've seen a lot of things in there. I really think we also need to change to zero-based budgeting. There's so many things in there that we could actually cut out. I believe there's a lot of fat in there, and a lot of the funding that we could put into roads or schools could come out of there. And every year, we see the budget keep on going up and up. And over the past 8 years that my opponent's been in, it's actually increased over $1.7 billion. And that's, I believe, overspending. So we need to rein that in, and we need to find ways to fund all other things through that, whether it's education, our roads. We just need to fix the budget. I mean, we're the highest, one of the highest per capita states for our budget, and that's not acceptable.
Ms. Fogarty?
I certainly support the line item veto. I think that we can work within our limits there and give a little bit more balance. I think that other states have different percentages of what you would have to reach to override a veto, and I don't think that if something is so glaringly poor that is pulled out of the budget, and that we really, if we wanted to go back in, that we couldn't get a, say, 2/3 the majority vote on it. Again, whatever the people would decide. So I support it. And just to go back at the budgeting issue, as far as what you say about zero-based budgeting, since I was on the town council for 10 years, and zero-based budgeting is kind of like a catchphrase, because it acts, when you do your budgeting, you're acting like you never had any costs. You don't have contracts, you don't have buildings to maintain. That's all there. So you can't say you're at zero-based when you already have definite things that have to be paid for and are that already there. So that's kind of a bit of a catchphrase that I know that always disturbed the town manager, Steve Alford, when he was putting his budget together. But again, I support a line item veto.
Thank you. All right. Last question for this round. Goes to Ms. Tansey and Ms. G. Wierzinski. Although Rhode Island has made some progress to lower unemployment and to create new jobs since the 2008 recession was declared over, the economy still lags other New England states. Please describe policies you believe would increase the number of good-paying, sustainable jobs in Rhode Island. Ms. Tansey.
Thank you. I think that we offer a tremendous amount of tax credits in our state, and many of them are incredibly effective. I'm hoping that we have increased oversight on how they're being spent and making sure that they have a full payback on the investment that we have. So first, I'd love to see more accountability in our tax credits so that we could actually make better and smarter investments. I think that we have a real lack of people who are going into the trades. These are incredibly high-paying jobs. These are, safe, secure jobs that people can raise families on. And I think that anything that we can do to increase the number of people who are not necessarily going into a college track to consider this type of career and support them as they enter that type of career, I think will be a good thing for the state.
Thank you. Ms. G. Wierzinski.
So I really think that we need to fix our business climate. We are 46th in the nation for business, and we can't be in that place anymore. We need to constantly move up. And right now, the small business community needs help, and a lot of the legislation that goes forth in state legislature is actually hurting our small business community. And the small business community comprises 98.9% of all businesses, and it provides 50% of our employment. So I have always been an advocate. I got endorsed by the Providence Chamber. I think if we fix our business economy in this state, then that'll lead to economic growth and prosperity. And I think that's the number one driver that we should be focusing on. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Salvaggio.
Oh, yes. This one kind of hits home for me because I come from a family that was small business owners. And that's what we did, provide jobs for other families. We need to work on technology in this state to bring more jobs, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. I believe in a vocational bill set. We need to add more money to that item in the state. So our kids, we need to invest in our kids so this way they can grow the businesses when they get older. I do support the college initiative with some reservations. It hasn't worked out as well. That's why I believe that we should start them young into these vocational programs, so this way they could find out what it's like. Originally, I went to Cranston West High School, and they had a vocational program where you could find out for automotive to learn how to fix cars, and if that wasn't a proper fit for you, you could go into computers and try that line of work. I think this is a good fit, so this way the students can figure out what they want to do, try it before they're in there, and
yeah. If it's a one or two words, go finish it, but okay.
And I believe that the students at that point would better integrate into society going forward. Their morale would be increased, so this
one or two words was fine, but please, thank you. Okay. Let's see. We are now going to the lightning round questions, which require only a yes or no answer address, and the questions will go to all candidates. Each candidate will be given 10 seconds to elaborate beyond a simple yes or no. We'll be going from left to right down the line. Let's see. Question 1. Do you support the use of taxpayer dollars to give tax incentives to attract businesses to Rhode Island? Ms. G. Wierzinski.
Big business, sorry, to clarify, did it say which type of business or just? All right, I'll just say yes, I want to promote business, but I want to help the small business community.
Ms. Tansey?
I do, but only with greater accountability. We need to have measurements that show that they're actually good investments.
I concur with that, yes.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Yes, I initiated a program that only pays if the jobs are delivered, good-paying jobs.
Silvaggio, yes or no?
No, I believe this reminds me of another 38 Studios deal. I think we should use the money
Okay,
to invest
thank
in
you.
the students and continue our
you.
vocational programs.
Okay, question 2, beginning with Ms. Tansey. Will you commit to continuing funding of the Rhode Island Promise Scholarship? That is, 2 free years of college tuition for qualified students at the Community College of Rhode Island. Ms. Tansey?
Yes, I would.
Ms. Fogarty?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely yes.
Mr. Silvaggio?
Yes, as stated, but I would like to revisit it and make sure the program's working to see if
Thank
we could
you.
do anything else to improve it.
Ms. Brzezinski?
Yes, but I would like to see the metrics improve.
Okay. The next question, Ms. Fogarty. In the 2019 legislative session, will you vote in favor of the Safe Schools Act, which would ban all guns from schools and school grounds except for visibly identified law enforcement officers?
Yes.
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 No.
No.
Yes, I was a co-sponsor.
Okay. Question 4. Mr. Monk, do you support the restoration of cost of living raises to municipal employees and teachers' pensions? Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Yes, if we can afford it, yes, absolutely.
Yes, after looking at the metrics.
Yes.
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 Okay. Question 5 to Ms. Senator Sheehan. If elected, will you vote to re-elect the current leader of your chamber of the legislature?
Yes.
No, I'll run for the president.
If he aligned with my values, that I would.
No.
No.
I'd have to know who was running.
Okay, now we're going to go to round 3.
Okay, well, apparently we've run out of lightning round questions.
No, we
Thank
can
you.
do more, but
Oh.
we can do them. Do you want to do more? Do you want
Oh,
to finish
well.
them up?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
okay, why not? Let's see.
Just
We're
explain what they are.
on to Mr. Silvaggio. Give him the start of this one. Rhode Island is one of only 4 states holding primaries in September or later. Would you support moving Rhode Island primaries
I would
to
support
August?
moving, I would support the
okay.
additional day for the primary for the working families that may
Sure.
not be able to make it.
Okay, thank you.
10 seconds.
Ms. G. Brzezinski. This is, okay. Rhode Island is one of only 4 states holding primaries in September or later. Would you support moving Rhode Island primaries to August? Yes or no?
Yes.
I would have to
Tan-
look into it more. I'm not sure how that would impact the national.
I'd have to look into it more, too, only because you find people would be on vacation. Yeah, so that's the other issue you have to look into.
Yeah, I would also be concerned about people being out of state in
Same.
August.
Same here. Thank you.
Okay. Now,
Let's go
okay.
into round 3.
Now we're going back to the regular round of questioning. Round 3, and we are back to Senator Sheehan and Mr. Silvaggio. The Rhode Island Office of Energy has a 10-year plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by the year 2035. What policies do you think the legislature can promote to reach this goal and to mitigate against the loss of property and shoreline as the seas rise and the storms become more violent? Senator Sheehan.
I certainly would concur with some of the analysis there. I think climate change, unfortunately, for some is called a hoax. but for the rest of us, it's a reality. And living in the ocean state has a deep impact on us. No pun intended. It'd be a bad joke at that. I supported the Deepwater Wind project, the demonstration project. I also support the expansion of that. The further we can move away toward renewables, the better off we are from fossil fuels. Solar energy, we're starting to see that bud here and there, and we've got to continue to support that with subsidies. I like what Massachusetts has done. They've taken basically vacant land that can't be used around highways and put that out to bid apparently to DOT, has somebody out there putting more solar panels out. We've done some of that. We have to do a lot more to become more independent, as well as more incentives for vehicles. Hybrids seem to be a good stepping stone towards full electric, as well as public vehicles continue to use natural gas and move over to electric very soon. Thank you.
Mr. Spagio.
Yes, I feel Warwick set a good example. They started installing solar panels to provide power for their businesses in the area, and the stats came out that it was actually supposed to be able to power all the businesses in the area. I think Narragansett could, and North Kingston can take some pointers from them and go into the Greenway, which is also the narrative that we're running with the STEM research to push that in vocational. The other problem that we're having with the climate change in Narragansett is the houses. I'm understanding with the zoning, now they have to raise them up so many feet and can only be 2 stories. So this is a tough issue that we're all facing and trying to tackle together. Hopefully we could get more data and I could get you more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next question will go to Ms. G. Wierzinski and Ms. Tanzi. The effort to expand early voting in Rhode Island died in the legislature for the 5th year in a row. In contrast, this year, 37 states and the District of Columbia allow some form of early voting. What is your position on early voting in Rhode Island? Ms. G. Wierzinski.
Yes. So I believe that we should make every effort to get people to come out and vote. It's an important civic duty, and I would support any way that we could get more voters out there.
Okay. Ms. Tanzi.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree that having better access to voting is an incredibly important part of our democracy. I supported all of the moves that we've made to expand access, including the automatic voter registration that we implemented, the online registration, which makes it incredibly easy for people to conveniently register online. And for all intents and purposes, we do have in-person early voting. It is not called that. It is called an emergency mail ballot, which is an incredibly confusing title to something that is in other states called in-person early voting. The bill that did not pass this year would have extended that to Saturday hours, which I think is incredibly important. A lot of people work non-traditional jobs, work long hours, and anything we can do to expand that access is very important. And I also am a huge proponent of not restricting access.
Thank you. Okay. The next question will go to Ms. Fogarty and Mr. Monk. As the new truck tolls are expected to cover only a small portion of the seriously needed repairs to Rhode Island's bridges and roads, what ideas do you have for funding of infrastructure improvements and maintenance in your district, as well as those needs throughout the state?
Well, if we follow roadworks to its 10-year plan, that will take care of the maintenance in the roads. And you do have to lobby for your districts. And I intend to continue to lobby. I know that I've worked to get our 138 paved, and also our bridge over the train tracks, which is part of my district, is really falling apart, and that could push down for on the TIP program, the traffic improvement plans, to about 2025. But you have to be your own advocate up at the DOT, and I went up there and talked to the director, and we're pushing our bridge to be done by 2021. So again, part of the roadworks plan was just not the tolls on the bridges, and it will work on those bridges that the tolls are close to, but then that releases the other federal money to make sure that the other roads and bridges in our local communities are fixed and repaired. Again, you have to fight for those dollars.
Thank you. Well, I think here you have used both of your.
No, he didn't.
Yes.
He only used one? Okay. And Ms. Salvaggio?
Yeah, about the roads, I don't think taxing's the way. What I noticed is when talking to other parents at my kid's school, one of them was a truck driver. It was actually 401 Transport. I believe he was contemplating on renaming it to, I think it's whatever Massachusetts name was, just so we wouldn't have to pay the tolls of going in and out. So not only are we losing by the truck drivers not going here, but now we're losing the revenue from the business that should have came into us.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yes, we have an objection here since the. Well,
Let's go on to the next question. Do you have, did you? Oh, Mr. Monk, I'm so sorry.
okay, Mr. Monk, sorry.
I would just like to say that I worked out of state for 30 years, and I traveled up and down the Connecticut Turnpike, New Jersey Turnpike, Pennsylvania Turnpike, name a turnpike, I've been on it. I'm not opposed to tolls. I'm certainly not opposed to charging tolls on trucks, and if the revenue that we're getting is not enough, then I'm not opposed to raising the toll. If you do the length of the Jersey Turnpike, I don't even know what a truck toll would be in that situation, but it's
about $46 because I travel it all the time.
It's considerable. So I don't think that we're overburdening people with it. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, this gets complicated keeping track of everything. So, okay, do we have time for another round? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Next, another round. The question will go to Ms. Tansey and Ms. G. Wrzesinski. Please explain your views on the need for legislation on sexual harassment for the legislative members and the employees at the Rhode Island State House. Ms. Tansey.
Thank you very much for that opportunity. It is an issue that I think is incredibly important. I chaired the task force that reviewed our decades-old existing laws, and it was clear to me and to the members of that task force. We had the Police Chiefs Association, the small business community represented, academia represented. A number of different perspectives were brought in to review our laws, as well as national experts that came in. We put forward a package of 7 bills that were very middle of the road, but based on expert testimony that would mandate training, which the state is currently providing for free for businesses. It would increase those who were subject to the anti-discrimination bills, or current existing law, and it would modify the actual description of who is an employee.
Thank you. G. Wrzesinski.
Yeah. So I believe that we must work together to end sexual harassment. We've seen that women come forward and find their voice to speak out. Change is possible and people are held accountable. I'd like to see all women be empowered and tell them to never be silent. My advice to all women and men, don't be afraid to name your perpetrator. Sexual harassment is unacceptable and should not be tolerated anywhere in our society, and anyone who commits a crime should be held accountable.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you. I certainly support this legislation. Very proud that we were able to pass it in the Senate and would fully intend to do so this next year. And I applaud my colleagues, especially Representative Tansey, for her taking the bull by the horns and really leading the charge on that issue. Should be very proud. I also sponsored legislation on a little bit of a separate issue, but connected also. Non-disclosure agreements have been agreements that have been put into place too often, I think, to conceal acts of sexual assault and sexual harassment. I put in legislation that would allow, as an option, for any victim of sexual harassment or assault to provide the name of the perpetrator of that assault or harassment so that no future person could fall victim to that same person. And we've seen that happen nationally. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next question goes to Mr. Monk and Ms. Fogarty. Over 9,000 people in Rhode Island currently receive rental assistance through the Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 program, with another 14,000 people on the waiting list. It is currently legal to refuse to rent to someone simply because they are paying part of their rent with a Housing Choice Voucher. A bill to ban this form of discrimination was passed in the Senate, but not in the House. If elected, would you support this bill, and what needs to happen to ensure a vote in both chambers of the legislature? Mr. Monk.
I don't understand why someone wouldn't be agreeable to renting to someone that was getting a check sent to them every month from the state of Rhode Island, even if the renter had to make up the difference. Years ago, we owned some property, my wife and I owned some property in Charleston, Rhode Island, and we rented to someone that was Section 8, and just like clockwork, every month, the check arrived, and then the tenant made up the difference. You're a lot less likely to lose money getting a check from the state than you are depending on someone's regular income. So I don't understand what the issue is. There's some very fine people that just need a push over the doorstep, and in order to be able to rent, in order to afford housing, and it's just discrimination, I guess, that makes people feel that way.
Thank you, Ms. Fogarty.
I would certainly support that bill. I know that Representative Shelby Maldonado was looking at affordable housing. This is one of the issues that was part of her committee in reviewing. I think it really takes a bit of education. It probably takes a little bit of education to some of the other representatives in the House. I do look at it as a discrimination with people not accepting the Section 8 housing vouchers. And with the affordable housing, people are needing more money, and if they have to get a Section 8 voucher to help them live in an area, we need more workforce housing, and we need more people to accept these types of vouchers because, like you said, it is dependable amount of money that will come in and be able to help people live in our community and other communities around the state and be our workforce housing.
Okay. The final question will go to Mr. Silvaggio and Senator Sheehan. The Community Service Grants Program, which is different from the legislative grants, was eliminated after a 2016 scandal. These grants to grassroots organizations help senior citizens and very young children. What will you do to restore funding to these vulnerable populations? Mr. Silvaggio.
That was a lot. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Okay. The Community Service Grants Program, which is different from the legislative grants, was eliminated after a 2016 scandal. These grants to grassroots organizations helped senior citizens and very young children. What will you do to restore funding to these vulnerable populations?
When talking about senior citizens and young children, I offer nothing but my support, but I have no knowledge about these information, so I cannot comment. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Senator Shea.
Oftentimes in politics, something goes wrong, we take kind of a sharp turn the other direction, swing back and forth like a pendulum. I think the problem with the community grants were not the grants themselves, but those who had a hand in them that should not have and personally benefit from them. We need greater accountability and oversight. I would favor a re-implementation of the program. I think that with greater scrutiny, we could responsibly, through the executive branch, follow through with these grants and make sure that they are managed properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we'll now move on to the closing?
Well, we have very little time left, so I don't know if you want to do any of these, or you just want to do the final minute, because we have 8:54.
Well, I think the closing statements right now
I
is
think
pretty
we'll have
bad.
to do the closing
I
statements.
think we'll move on to the closing statements right now, and they will be going in order from left to right, starting with Ms. G. Wierzinski.
Very good. So I commend anyone who serves in the role of a public servant. It is a hard job and requires a lot of sacrifice, as we know. However, if I could comment on the last 8 years of my opponent's record, I would have wanted to see more of a focus on legislation that would move our state forward and lead it to economic prosperity and growth, as well as a focus on public health issues such as health care. Everything I do is with purpose and passion. As your legislator, I will focus on issues that will improve the quality of life in our great ocean state. As someone who has managed multi-million-dollar budgets and having had to have made tough decisions, I will do that for Rhode Island. I am not seeking office, not to make headlines. I'm not an activist for a single issue. I am running because I love this state and I want to see things fixed. In the words of JFK, let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Dancy.
I'm so proud of the work I've done as your state representative over the last 8 years. I've worked hard to stand up for the things that matter most in our community, dug in deep to study the issues and offer concrete solutions. I was honored to be vice chair of the House Finance Committee, where I have been able to help South County Hospital and those with intellectual and developmental disabilities get the funding they need and deserve. I passed a life-saving bill that disarms domestic abusers so that their victims can free themselves from abusive relationships. I took on the NRA, Big Tobacco, Big Pharma, and I won. Last year, I publicly spoke out about the sexual harassment I, and so many others, have experienced in the workplace, and then joined forces with police chiefs, the business community, and academia to propose meaningful solutions. More than ever, we need outspoken, hardworking, independent leaders in government. I have a proven record of taking on powerful interests and winning. I hope you'll keep all of these accomplishments in mind as you decide who to vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fogarty.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum this evening. My name is Kathleen Fogarty, and I humbly ask you for your support on November 6th. I would like to go up and do a third term up at the State House. I've spent 10 years here in the South Kingstown Town Council, 4 years as vice president and 2 years as president of the council. And I learned a lot as a council president or my time on the town council, and I brought that great education up to the State House, so much so that I was appointed to chairwoman of the municipal government. Up there, I fight good bills and I fought bad bills. There are a lot of bills that have come down that have tried to change our zoning and planning. I haven't forgotten South Kingstown. I call the town manager. I call my planning board. I talk to my zoning people. I talk to my town council representatives and the school committee. So I'm very in touch with what's happening in South Kingstown. When I was up at the State House, I also passed, this past year, the hands-free bill, trying to reduce the risk of distracted driving on the road and save lives. I also worked with Nellie Gorbea and changed the voting machines and modernized the voting for people to come be able to vote. Everybody should vote. And again, I humbly ask for your support on November 6th. Thank you.
Mr. Monk.
I was motivated to run for state representative in the 35th District because the Democratic Party in the state of Rhode Island holds a supermajority in the House and the Senate. It occurred to me, tongue-in-cheek, that the only thing worse than politicians that don't get along is politicians that do. Democracy works best when there are checks and balances. Without strong opposition, the legislature is just a rubber stamp to the platform of the majority party. As an independent, I have no allegiance to any party. I can judge every issue on its own merits rather than on a party line. My campaign is self-funded, and if I were to be elected, I would use my legislative salary to fund future campaigns. To remain independent, I will not accept any funding from PACs. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Sheehan.
Thank you. I wish to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this informative session and my fellow candidates in the audience here and at home. I care deeply about the future of our residents, especially our children. I seek re-election because I believe that through civic involvement, we can truly make a difference in our community and our state. We need elected officials with the experience, leadership skills, principled determination to make the changes needed to move our state forward. I believe my record demonstrates I possess those qualities. Indeed, throughout my tenure in office, I've been a strong advocate for good government, making health care more affordable and accessible, improving the economy, and improving the quality of life in our state. I've done a number of things, whether it's Ethics Commission, restoring its jurisdiction of the General Assembly, job creation, and also preserving our environment. There's more work to be done. With your support, I will continue to focus on making our government better serve the needs of the people in Rhode Island. For more information, please go to my webpage at www.senatorsheehan.com. SenatorSheehan.com. I thank you and respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Mr. Savaggio.
I would like to take this time to first thank the President, Nina, of the League of Women's. Geez, I gotta look at it because I'm getting under pressure here. For conducting this forum, so this way my constituents' voices can be heard through me. This is very important, and we have a pretty decent turnout here. My name is John Savaggio, and I hope these issues today that we talked about, I gained your confidence and that I can do this job as a state senator. It requires your confidence, and it requires that you know that I'm going to do the right thing. So thank you for your time and watching tonight, and I wish to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. Holly, thank you for asking the questions to us, and I wish to thank the constituents for writing these questions that are important to you. And again, I wish to thank Senator Sheehan for debating me in here today, and I wish to thank the other members because even though I ran as the Republican card, I seen the doors open. Most of my nomination papers were signed across the aisle, and the party doesn't matter to me. Thank you.
Thank you all. It's wonderful.
I'd like to thank all the candidates again for voicing their opinions so clearly and thoughtfully. And I'd also like to thank you, the members of the audience here at Narragansett Town Hall, and thanks to our cable TV viewers. I would also like to thank the many people who have helped put on these forums, and tonight is the last forum of election year 2018. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters Rhode Island Education Fund for providing funding, the Town of Narragansett for the use of the Town Hall and Council chambers, and the staff at Narragansett Town Hall for their help and cooperation. Many thanks to my fellow members of the League of Women Voters, South County, and thanks to Public Access Television, PEG-RI-TV, for handling the live broadcast and frequent broadcasts of this program. The forum will be rebroadcast on channels 17 and 18, Cox channels 17 and 18, and Verizon channels 28 and 29, frequently between now and Election Day. There is a rebroadcast schedule on the table at the back of the room. The rebroadcast schedule will also be on the League's website, www.lwvrisc.org. The forums will also be available to be viewed digitally via the link on our webpage and our Facebook, which is League of Women Voters South County. Tonight's forum, it'll probably take a couple of days to upload, but the other forums here and in Westerly should be up there. We'd greatly appreciate your completing the audience survey, which hopefully you received when you came in, and putting them in the basket at the door. We do pay attention to what you say. Thank you.